Wow. What an entrance there. Holy cow. Hey guys, welcome back. Live at 5. Jeb Smith, Josh Lewis here in Southern California, here to answer your real estate and mortgage questions. Obviously, there's a lot of information floating around the intrawebs, if you will, with regards to what's going on in the housing market, what's going on with interest rates, crashes, forbearance, all this good stuff, right? We're here to break it down, get the real news, not the fake news, if you will. And, we're here to answer your questions. So put those in the comments below. Josh, let's throw up some name tags. Look at that. Fancy.
Very fancy. And sunshiny with the orange and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I purchased a template. That's what you get. You get orange. You can't change it. So anybody out there that does graphics, reach out to me. You could have a job here because I'm not really happy with this, but it was easy. Josh's YouTube channel is actually there. That's Buywise Borrow Smart. That's under his name. My Instagram handle's under mine because you guys clearly know my YouTube channel because you're here. But Josh, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. What do you want to get off your chest tonight?
No, you
said you were stressed prior to the call.
Stressed. They don't want to know what our stress is. We're having to redo the office here and make it prettier so that the employees will be happy to be here 47 hours a day, and that is stressful. And then having to go and we, probably the biggest stressor is this time next month I'm getting my shoulder replaced. So just lots of stress. It's a hard life.
It is a hard life, but it's all good, right? So what do you guys want to know? That is the important question tonight. I posted a video today, so anybody watching this that hasn't seen it, if you're a first-time home buyer, take a look at it. It is talking about biggest mistakes that home buyers make. I think there's some things in there that you probably haven't heard real estate agents say. And I think it's a good video for anybody looking to buy a house. So check that out. And also, when you're watching this tonight, if you have ideas for video content, put them in the comment section and we'll see if we can put something together for you. So let's see what we got. We've got no questions. So I guess they just want us to talk.
There's nothing left to ask. We've answered all of the questions in previous lives, so there will be no more questions about whether the market is slowing, whether it's going to be a buyer's market next week, or any of that stuff. But
no,
see, there comes Johnny. Johnny on the spot as we need a question jumps right in.
Yeah, Johnny does. But before we do that, I'll just take a minute and talk about inventory here locally, right? So, I know some people watch from Southern California here. So I obviously keep an eye on inventory, right? Because as a real estate agent, I want to see inventory levels increase. Some don't believe that, but a little bit more property on the market is a good thing. It helps buyers find the right properties. It helps those sellers that are potentially looking to sell also start to see properties and maybe list their homes. It makes the experience a lot better from all sides. And so you guys probably heard me say, last week, I think we had, 170 something homes on the market. Today, we had about 10 new active properties come to the market here in my local market in Huntington, but yet we still only have about 163 active homes on the market. So new homes are coming to the market every single day, but yet our inventory levels seem to be declining. Now we're still higher than we were a couple of weeks ago, but you would think with 5-10 new properties coming in the market every day, that would start to build, and it's not, because people are still going into escrow. Orange County as a whole, we're back under 2,500 homes. I think we're at like 2,450-ish homes active on the market. Not a lot of inventory. So things are getting a little better, but it's not a buyer's market by any means. And I know a lot of people have those questions out there. So, but let's do it. Let's dive into Johnny's question. So Johnny Co, are new construction builders accepting buyer's letters, or is it frowned upon? Oregon, the state of Oregon is actually the first state to actually outlaw them entirely. They don't allow them whatsoever. Now, the fair housing from the National Association of Realtors has basically come out and said that buyer letters aren't something that should be done. It's kind of frowned upon, if you will, just because there's an opportunity for the seller to decide who they want to go with based on that. New construction, is not really the same type of deal, right? It's not an emotional sell in those cases. So whereas you normally provide a buyer letter because you want to tie to the emotion of the seller. And it's because they've raised their kids there, or because they've done nice upgrades to the house, or whatever it is. You're trying to get emotion out of them and them to pick you because of that emotion. The building side, new construction, it's all business. They don't care who, if I'm being frank, they don't care who you are. In most cases, at least that's the way I look at it. They don't care how many family members you have. They don't care if you're going to live in it, invest in it. They don't, right? They're looking for the number on paper. And a lot of home builders typically, they have a set price. You offer that price, you get the property. Now, in this market, things are a little bit different. There's bidding on these properties, and some builders not even putting a price on the properties, and drawing up multiple offers and that sort of thing. That's a different environment, but I don't think a buyer letter is really going to help you in that case. But to answer your question, are they accepting them? I honestly don't know. But I don't think it's necessary, right? I don't think they're going to pick one over the other because of that. They're going to pick it based on the terms of the contract. Josh, your thoughts on that?
No, I'd say the same thing. They probably have the same concerns as a private seller, maybe even on a larger scale, because they're selling, 10, 50, 100 homes in a tract. If somehow it turned out that it ended up in all white neighborhood or an all brown neighborhood, people of different colors, ethnicities, whatever, could come back and give them problems. So if anything, no firsthand knowledge, but I would think they'd be even more concerned about it than a one-off seller who could just say, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I picked the highest priced offer."
No, great stuff. Kevin comes in and says, hello. Thanks, Kevin, for being here. Let's see. Cody's got a good question here. This is something we actually have never addressed on this show that I'm aware of. Do you guys work with a MCC certificate for mortgage? So Josh, why don't you enlighten our viewers on what an MCC certificate is, how it works, and if lenders accept them and use them and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So people are aware of the 4 pillars of homeownership, the financial things that made owning a home so financially helpful for families in terms of building wealth. It used to be the tax deduction. You would say, okay, all of my interest that I pay on my home is tax deductible. So let's go back 25 years. When I started doing loans, it was really common for someone to get a $200,000 mortgage at 8%. That person's paying $16,000 a year, and that could be deducted off of their income. Now, the standard deduction was much lower than $16,000. So if you were a renter using the standard deduction, you switch to a homeowner, now you have this big deduction. It makes a big benefit for you at the end of the year in getting a much smaller tax bill or a bigger tax refund. So in 2018, Trump passed one of the first things he did is change the tax guidelines. So we had a reduction of state and local taxes, which means for most of us here in California and in any other high-priced area with high state taxes, the deduction of property taxes is worth very little. But even we had a couple of factors that have come into play. We got a much bigger standard deduction. A married couple, without itemizing your deductions, gets a $25,000 deduction. So your mortgage interest would have to exceed $25,000 along with your other itemized deductions before it even makes sense to itemize. So now we get to the question is, okay, cool, what's a mortgage or credit certificate? Why would it be even more valuable now that we have the less advantageous tax treatment of mortgage interest? Instead of deducting the mortgage interest from your total income before you pay your taxes, a mortgage credit certificate is issued by the government to help first-time buyers to qualify. And what it does is they take either 15 or 20% of the mortgage interest paid and give that to you as a credit towards having paid your taxes. And then we can use that to help you in qualifying, either by adding that credit to your income or sometimes actually decreasing the monthly payment for qualifying purposes. So to give you an example here, let's say someone buys a $300,000 home. Minimum down, and they end up with a $300,000 loan at 3% today. They have $9,000 of interest, but with a 15% mortgage credit certificate, that would give you, I made it hard here, didn't I? $1,350 tax credit with a mortgage certificate. So it's a credit towards already having paid your taxes. So $135 a month, it's a little, or $1,350 a year. It's a little bit more than $100 a month. So we can add that to your income for qualifying. It used to be pretty much across the board. We could reduce your mortgage payment by $100 and do that with the qualifying. But it's much more beneficial now that a lot of people, entry-level buyers that are buying at $250, $350, and they're married, they may not benefit from itemizing at all. Whereas that mortgage credit certificate can come in and still give you some tax savings by giving you a credit towards already having paid your taxes. So now the question is, do we do them? The funny thing is, I hadn't thought of these for a couple of years. I think the reason is most of our clients that are buying in California don't qualify. The home prices are high enough that you make too much money if you qualify for the home to qualify for the mortgage credit certificate program. They used to have them where each county and different areas of the state would have their own MCC program. For us in California, we only have the statewide MCC. So it's a great program if you can get it. It's restrictive and it's harder to qualify for now that purchase prices are a little bit higher. But if you qualify, you can get it. It's an awesome program, and most lenders aren't aware of it and haven't dealt with it. So if you're looking into doing it, find a lender that actually has done one before.
Yeah. Josh, great explanation, breaking it down. I mean, that is expertise. That is experience. I'm going to toot your horn a minute. That's why working with a pro is different, right? If you ask 9 out of 10 mortgage professionals out there, guarantee you most of them don't even know what an MCC is to start. But being able to break it down like that and actually provide you the information is critical. So if you don't know, I mean, if you're looking for one, your lender doesn't know, reach out to Josh or I. We're happy to put you in touch with somebody that has that level of experience and knowledge and can guide you in the right direction. So,
but Jeb, to piggyback on top of that, if you ask someone, if you're talking to someone about a loan, you say, well, what about a mortgage credit rate? Oh, you don't want that. Or, oh, that's not available. If you get like a really short answer, be wary, because one of the things that we hear, and I know you hear this on the real estate side also, Jeb, is people that when you're asking a professional, lender or realtor, and they just don't know, and it's going to be something they have to learn or outside of their comfort zone, or they don't know, it's super easy to just go, oh, that makes it difficult, or, oh, you don't want that. I mean, we hear that with VA loans all the time. Someone will come to us and say, hey, I'm a veteran and I want to do 0 down, and my realtor or my lender is saying, you don't want that. No one will accept an offer with VA, when it's the best benefit you can have. So there's any number of things. Mortgage credit certificates. We get another question here, someone asking about, are there home buyer grants? There are, for the most part, depending on where you're at. And these things, sometimes the professional makes less money on them. Sometimes they're harder. Sometimes they just don't know about them and they'll have to do some research. But probably the biggest tip off that someone doesn't have your best interest at heart is when they just blow it off. Go, oh, you don't want that, or, oh, it's not available. It may very well be that you don't qualify or it's not the best thing for you, but they should be able to give you a reasonable and fact-based answer as to why it's not.
No, and I'll piggyback off what you just said, and we'll leave this alone. But the whole grant thing and first-time home buyer programs and that sort of thing, understand they do make the process a little more complicated, a little more convoluted most of the time. And if you're in a competitive market, that might be why somebody's advising you not to do them. But you, as the buyer, have that option, and if that's something you want to do, then your real estate agent should, submit the offer how you want to submit it. And, and I do stuff like that all the time. Now, we don't really have the down payment type programs and the grant programs here in Southern California, but sometimes, I give advice to clients and then they come back and still want to do their own thing. And I'm like, okay, let's go your direction and see how it works. And if because I tell clients all the time, like, listen, I've been wrong many times in my career, whether or not I think somebody will accept an offer or whether or not I think a property will sell at X price or whatever. You're the boss. I'm working for you as your real estate agent, right? You're the one making the choices. I'm just one facilitating the transaction and helping you along the way and guiding you through that process. And if you have somebody that won't even go that route, find somebody new. I mean, quite frankly, honestly, there's a million real estate agents out there, literally. And so find somebody that's willing to do it. And then, if you're not having success, then go a different direction. But, I won't go down that road. But anyway, I was going to make a video today. Maybe you guys can tell me whether I should make this video. I was going to make a video. I was kind of pissed off, right? I got some news from unprofessional real estate agent. In fact, I didn't get any news. I had to figure out the news on my own because of how unprofessional the transaction was. So I had this bright idea that I was going to come back to the office and I was going to film a video specifically for real estate agents, because I know a lot of real estate agents watch my channel. And so I was just going to go deep and say, listen, if you're in this market, these are things you should be doing as a real estate agent, because it makes the experience better for the buyer. It makes the experience better for the seller, and it makes the experience better for both real estate agents. And, but I was going to be heated when I did it, and it was going to come across like I was a, complete jackass when I did it. So I backed off. This is what happens as you get older. You back off things, Josh. You just don't do them right then. You give us some time to breathe. So if you guys think I should do that, put it in the video and in the comments.
Did you come back to the office Don Draper style and go over and pour yourself a little whiskey and sit back and lift the feet up for a minute and think the better of it?
I didn't, but when the office gets redone, I'll consider it. Instead, I got a bank. Who out there works for Bang and wants to sponsor me? I'll drink it every time. I don't even, I'm not, anyway.
Yeah, Jeb, for those of you that don't know, Jeb was telling me he has an in at 805 and he was unable to close the deal with our 805 sponsorship. We don't even need money. We just need free beer. We just need free beer.
I need like 100,000 subscribers before they'll even consider me, I think. Okay. So how do, I have no idea. Sorry. I just butchered that. I just got my offer accepted today, got our inspection, and wow, people are wild for not getting one. Absolutely. You should definitely get an inspection. Someone told me on a video today, in fact, I think they're here on the chat, that when they walked through the property, they actually had their inspector there, kind of walking through the property with them on their initial walkthrough. And so they made an offer contingent upon waiving the inspection because they kind of had somebody there with them. Not a bad idea. Now that inspector obviously can't do the due diligence they would normally do on a property, but if you're going to consider waiving an inspection, that's not a bad direction to go. Jorge is asking about rates. We are going to talk about rates, but we're not going to talk about them right now. We're going to wait just a little bit here. Let's see. Ricky is saying, haven't seen a slowdown in Southern California, specifically Fallbrook, Bonsall, Valley Center. So those are San Diego. Those are in San Diego County. San Diego, third hottest market in the United States last year, I believe, 20-something% appreciation. Yeah, it's crazy. And in those markets that you're talking about, typically have less expensive homes in San Diego County. So people are getting pushed out of some of those higher priced cities in San Diego, and they're considering a little bit more inland, where things have been less expensive, and that market is just gone crazy. And I think a lot of the U.S. is seeing something similar to that in some of these markets.
And I wanted to kind of talk about this today, just saying, because I saw so many headlines this week, both in the YouTube feed, especially in the YouTube feed, but also in my Google feed, of just headlines from the popular press, Fox News, Yahoo News, Housing Wire, talking about housing market slowing, the pace of sales slows. And my answer to that is, compared to what? Compared to what? Those are all absolutely true. Jeb's gone through the numbers the last couple weeks for our market. So I always want to say two things. All real estate is local. So do you care what's happening in Fallbrook, Bonsall, or Valley Center if you're buying in Tennessee? No, you don't. You want to know what's happening in Tennessee. So you need to know exactly what's happening local. And yeah, the market has slowed, but it's still, we talk about this every week, it is still massively a seller's market. I had 5 different buyers writing offers this week, some multiple offers. We have got one accepted, and I think 9 or 10 offers written, possibly more. So again, that's anecdotal. Those are all Southern California, south of Sacramento. So what it does, again, if you're in Tennessee, that tells you nothing about your market. But us locally here, it's slowed a little bit, a few more homes for sale, a few less buyers, but it's still massively, the supply and demand numbers favor the sellers.
Agreed. So let's see. Dave Morris, looking to buy, but also need to find a temporary place. I'm nervous as I don't want to rent anything and have to break a lease if I do get an offer accepted. So, situations like this, might consider a short-term rental, an Airbnb for a period of time is not a bad way to go if you can find one for a longer-term rental. Now, You're going to pay a little bit more for those traditionally than, finding an actual place. In fact, if you find anybody that is willing to do a month to month, typically speaking, you're going to pay a little bit more for that, just because there's cost incurred when you move out and they have to maybe redo some stuff or paint some stuff or clean, whatever it is. It's a little bit more expensive to maintain a property on a short-term basis versus something longer term. But there are plenty of places out there that will, I don't know where you're located, but regardless of that, there's always short-term rentals, because there's always businesses, where people come in for a short period of time and need temporary housing and that sort of thing. So you can likely find something. But what I will tell you is that in this environment, rentals are in very, very high demand. I spoke to a potential buyer about a week ago now, and his lease isn't up until next year. And I said, listen, here's the deal. If you find a property now, because he's actively looking, I said, there's a really good chance that your landlord could find another renter pretty easily, just because of the lack of available supply, even on the rental side. So, maybe that's a conversation you have up front and say, listen, if I'm able to find something, because I am looking for a house, I don't want to break the lease, but if that it came to that, would you be willing to try to find another tenant and let me out? And most of these people are going to be able to work with you and, are willing to work with you, right? I mean, for the most part. Now you'll get some people that may not, but, but to get back to what I was saying, maybe try some of the Airbnbs, the VRBO type rentals, depending on your market. You might be able to find something that can keep you going for a couple of months, and maybe even find something furnished where you could put your stuff in storage and not have to worry about it. Rishi simply. She was here. Yeah. Hello, gents. I was under the impression that I need to save 3% for closing costs, but looks like many of my friends are paying only 1%. Any comments? Is that expected? So Josh, traditional amount of closing cost.
If you look at any of the fun stuff online, the factual encyclopedias like Zillow and Redfin, they'll plug in numbers like 2 and 3%. And what I would say is, if you're in a lower cost area, let's say you're in a market where a new entry level home is $175,000, your closing costs are probably going to be more than 1%. For us here in Southern California, I just ran some numbers for one of Jeb's clients. They're looking somewhere between $700 and $850, and depending on where they land, it's going to be $4,500 to $5,500 for closing costs. That's less than 1%, and that's pretty consistent across the board, because most of our buyers are anywhere from $400 to $2 million. So it's generally for us well less than 1%. The other thing to remember is you always have to be prepared for your prepaids at closing. So if you're putting a minimum down and you're using an FHA or a VA loan where you're required to have your taxes and insurance impounded, you're going to have to prepay some interest at closing. You're going to prepay some taxes at closing. You're going to pay your first year's homeowner's insurance. And depending on where you're at and what point in the year you're at, meaning what point in the year relative to when the taxes come due, those can vary a good bit. So I would generally count on another 1% for your prepaids, but the realistic number is it's probably going to come in somewhere around 1.5% for closing costs and prepaids on top of your down payment. So that's why it's really important. We get people asking all the time, or they'll call up and go, okay, we want to buy a $500,000 house and we can do 3% down. Okay, well, how much total do you have? I got $15,000. So we know in that situation, we got no money for prepaids, we got no money for closing costs, and we have to either get that from the seller, which we know doesn't happen in this market, or get a lender credit for them, meaning we got to go with a slightly higher interest rate, which can impact the qualifications.
Yeah, no, I think Josh touched on this a little bit, and he's talked about it several times. There's definitely miscommunication, misinformation when people say closing cost, right? They're typically talking about everything a lot of times, whereas lenders might just be talking about the true closing costs on the transaction, and not all of the ancillary fees like, title and escrow and all of these additional fees, right? They might just be talking about their fees. And so, make sure you're clarifying when somebody says they're paying 1% in closing costs. What are they actually talking about? Are they talking just origination fees? Are they talking about just lender fees? Are they talking about everything? Are they including the tax? Like, what numbers are being discussed here? Because I think that's where, misinformation starts to get out there, is because people aren't truly clear. They're not talking about the same things when they're comparing numbers. And that's the biggest confusion.
And one of the things, 90% of you here are asking about purchasing, buying a home, not refinancing. So on a refinance, me as a lender, I'm picking escrow and title, and I've negotiated those fees to rock bottom levels, and they're a fixed cost within a range of loan amounts. So I can tell you this is exactly what your closing costs are going to be, and there's nothing that's going to vary from that. On a purchase, I don't control who escrow is. I don't control who title is. We know within a reasonable range what those costs are going to be, but sometimes you get a rogue escrow company that has super high fees. The best example I have, we closed a deal on Monday for a gentleman out in the Victorville area. And when he called my loan partner, he says, hey, great news. I got a property under contract. I'm just looking, I want to see if there's anything you can do about these closing costs. I need to get those lower. They tell him there's nothing we can do about the closing costs because we don't have any costs. We don't charge an admin fee, an underwriting fee, any of that stuff. So everything on there is truly a third-party charge. So we've talked about this before. When you're looking at your loan estimate, when you get a loan estimate from a lender, you want to look in box A. Box A tells you everything that's being charged by the lender. So if they're charging you any points for that loan, it has to go in there. If they charge you a processing fee, an admin fee, an origination fee, an underwriting fee, any of that goes in there, and that's money that's going to them, and they can control that. So that you can negotiate with your lender, but on a purchase, everything else on there, if you're talking to 3 good loan officers that know how to accurately complete a loan estimate, everything should be pretty similar in those other boxes to get you a reasonable estimate, but they don't control any of them. I control nothing other than box A. So it's important to note when you're shopping for a mortgage on your purchase to know the difference not only of closing costs and prepaids, but what your lender controls, first party charges that are in box A, and the third party charges that they have no control over.
No, good explanation. Logical thinker, is the 1% rule accurate that when interest rates increase by 1%, home values typically decrease by 10%, and when rates decrease by 1, home values increase by 10? Josh, thoughts on that?
So it's tempting to say that right now because we looked, from 2019, we were up at 4.5%, 2018 up at the 4.5% range, down to the almost 2.5% range by late 2020, and home prices shot up during that time frame. So it's tempting to say home prices shot up because interest rates went down. Historically, that's not the case. Interest rates are low when the economy is doing poorly and we don't have much inflation, and inflation generally applies to homes as well. So if you look back, I've got a couple time frames here. In May of 1983, we had interest rates go from 12.5 to 14.5, and home values shot up. So interest rates up, home values up. 1987, rates went from 9 to 11.5. Home values shot up. 1993, same thing, went from 6.8, so 7% to 9%, home values shot up. And again in 99 to 2000, 7% to 8.5%. So generally interest rates go up when inflation is taking hold and shooting up. And that will then also apply to homes. Now we're in sort of a new era here that interest rates—
The new normal, Josh.
the new normal. It's the new normal. So interest rates are low, and they're going to be low for a long, long time. It would be very boring call here for us to go into the details of why they're low and why they're going to remain low. But when you have that, there's a little bit of a detachment to home values. It will continue to be stimulative to home prices because we've talked about this before. What do people care about when they're buying a home? They care about what their monthly payment, and specifically what percentage of their household income has to go to that monthly payment. And that's remained fairly stable while home prices have shot up because interest rates have gone down and incomes have gone up a little bit during the same time. So as long as we continue to have that dynamic, I think we'll see that that what you're talking about here, this 1% rule, historically has not been true. You've seen the exact opposite. Interest rates down, values are more likely to be flat or down. Interest rates up, home values generally go up. But I think we will continue to see what you're talking about. If interest rates slide down, we will have home values go up. And if we had a situation where rates went back to 4.5 like they were late 2018, it would be problematic for the housing market because the people that bought homes at $800,000, that the payment is equivalent to what the $600,000 payment would have been a few years ago. They're not going to have people to sell those homes to because we talked about willing demand and able demand. Demand would be drastically decreased by the number of people who are able to pay the higher debt service on that monthly payment. So historically, this has not been true, but I would expect it to be true going forward. But we have zero concern about rates going up in the near term and causing home values to decrease.
All right. Jennifer, who is our moderator here. If you guys get booted, it's because Jennifer booted you or Nightbot booted you. But anyway, thank you for being here, Jennifer. She's got a question. Top 3 actions, issues that could cause a buyer to lose the loan during the escrow period. So I'm going to take a stab here, Josh, and say definitely people charging things on credit after being pre-approved. So changing, their debt to a point where they no longer qualify for the loan would be one, right?
Yep.
Some sort of change of employment, perhaps. They go out, change jobs. Maybe they decide to be 10. I don't know. And I'm trying to think of what the third one could be, but
the third one generally comes down to money, doing something crazy with money, borrowing a bunch of money, not telling someone, say, no, I've got 15, that we talked about example. If someone has $15,000 total to work with and they say, I have 15 grand to work with, and then magically it pops up. And this can be 2 things. Let's say they got a $15,000 cash advance on a credit card. So you talk about don't borrow, don't buy stuff. Lenders are doing undisclosed debt monitoring throughout the process. So there's nothing that you are going to do in terms of buying a car, getting a credit card, buying appliances, furniture, that's not going to pop up and have the lender ask a question. And if there's new debt there, we have to get it and count it in your debt to income ratio. That's where that piece can be problematic. If you go out and buy a new car and you have a super low debt to income ratio, no one cares. You provide us the note and we go, okay, it's $500. We add it in the debt ratio. You're fine. Changing jobs is another one. It can be nothing. It can be monstrous. So I have clients that, hey, I make $80,000 a year as a secretary. And, my old boss went to a new company. He loves me. He wants me to be a secretary there. I just switched. I got $100,000 a year. Not a problem. It's the same job, just a higher pay rate. Where we have problems is someone will get pre-approved in January. They come back in June and say, hey, I found a home I want to buy, and I'm making a lot more money now. Well, cool. How are you making a lot more money? Well, my side business took off, so I quit my main job, and I'm making 20 grand a month. My side business took off, and now it's making so much money, I quit my W-2 job. Well, we don't have a 2-year history of that. So those are the things. And what can happen with money? We talked about borrowing money, transferring money, things that we can't source. We got a bunch of money under the mattress at home, and magically it pops up in the bank. Those would be the 3 biggest things.
All right. Good stuff. Mike Rev, happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday to you. Is there a way to speed up getting an FHA number for a single unit condo approval loan? Need to get appraisal going. So let's take a step back here. So when you get an FHA loan, if you're buying a condo, typically speaking, always that complex needs to be FHA approved. Same thing with VA, right? And if that complex is not FHA and or VA approved, there's a way to do something called a spot approval, which means that you can apply to get that particular unit approved through FHA and or VA, or you can get the entire complex approved in some cases in order to for them to be able to do FHA and VA loans. But it's always been a lengthy process. It's never been something that happens overnight. And I would imagine in this environment with a lot of it going on, FHA being run by the government, it's probably taking a little bit longer than normal. But Josh, what are the timeframes on that? There's not really a way to speed it up that I'm aware of. But I know there are companies out there that specifically do that sort of thing, and maybe they have a faster process in making that happen.
So a true spot approval is FHA, HUD, and FHA telling the lender, a direct endorsement lender that's going to make the loan, that, hey, you get to make the decision. You're certifying to us that you reviewed all of the documentation and that complex meets the requirements for entire complex approval, and you're putting your neck on the line. Most lenders will not do that. So, Mike, the answer to your question is the fastest and easiest way is to get with a lender that truly will do a spot approval, does them regularly, and can do it in a short time frame. The other issue that comes into play is how quickly can you gather the documentation that they need to review. Hopefully, the homeowners association is cooperative. Crazily enough, I had an agent call me last month saying, hey, we have to go FHA, this complex is not approved, and the HOA is telling us they won't give us any of the documentation. And you look at it, what was that, Jeb?
No, I was going to give you a minute to breathe there, but you're good.
Yeah. No,
let's just go silent.
Let's just go silent. We got something going down the wrong pipe. But In that situation, it was going to be a little bit difficult. We can get the documentation. You're entitled as a buyer to request that documentation from the HOA. You'll get it. They can't tell you can't get the complex FHA approved. It's not up to them. The HOAs think that they can control that. They can control whether they pay for it, but not whether they actually do it. So again, that spot approval on an FHA is done by the lender. So if you have a lender that does it regularly, you can pull the documentation together fairly quickly. They can get that done. If you're dealing with a lender that doesn't do spot approval and it's got to go to the FHA, again, just from experience, last month, that one we went to HUD, and they're running about 45 days. So if you pull everything together quickly, get it over to them, it's going to be 45 days. So again, in a really hot market, most sellers, if their complex isn't approved, they don't want to wait around for that.
No, good stuff. Jose is asking, is there a way to stop investors calling me, texting me to buy my home? Not really. Your information's out there somewhere. And, but what I will tell you is most of the information that floats around out there, people wanting to buy your home. I have a buyer. It's marketing, right? Agents do that sort of marketing to try to generate listings. Most of the time they don't have buyers at all. In this environment, maybe they do just because of the lack of inventory, but to answer your question, no, there's not really a way to stop it. I mean, you could be on a do not call list and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still probably going to come through. There's enough spam filtering out there to knock a lot of that stuff down these days where you're not getting the true spam calls. But outside of that, not really. But if you're somebody watching this, I meet with clients all the time, potential listings, and they're like, I just got a letter in the mail yesterday that so-and-so has 5 buyers for my house. Like, yeah, that's a marketing piece. It's, they may have a buyer, they may not, but, most of the time they're trying to generate listings, if anybody's watching that.
No, it's 100% true, Jeb. Without naming names, the number 1 or number 2 realtor here in our market sent me one of those about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was of the mind that I might be willing to sell. So I called and I said, listen, I'm in the business. I know you don't have a buyer. I'm only calling you to say if you had a buyer, I would be willing to show it to them. I'm not going to show it to you. No, we absolutely have a buyer, but I need to preview it and make sure it would work for them. So you know what? I'm working from home. Come over, check it out. And they had no one, but strangely, after they previewed it, they knew exactly what it was. About 6 weeks later, they came across a buyer that loved our house and did want to come over. They didn't want to pay what we wanted for it, but that's generally what it works like. A high-end realtor that's doing a lot of business, they'll come across a buyer in a limited inventory market like this, but it's pretty rare that they actually have one. They're just fishing to see who's willing to sell.
Absolutely. Let's see here. XX, where do you guys think the SoCal market is going in the next few months? I believe the market's going to move sideways to up. I think you probably got another 3 to 5% appreciation this year, if I had to guess. And again, it's hard to say. I see more inventory coming to the market, but I also see buyers overbidding and on certain properties and paying above the asking price. I mean, I've been in a couple of situations where buyers have, written offers, and there's been 38 offers, and there's been 19 offers, and there's been this sort of thing. And at the same time, I have property that, is borderline overpriced in this market, and it's sitting. So it's hard to say the direction, but I don't think if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to pull back, that's not going to happen. But I see a little bit more stabilization to slower growth over the next 6 months to a year, if I had to guess.
And yeah, we keep going over that repeatedly. And I just want to keep reiterating that Jeb and I, wish for nothing more than for this to moderate. When I hear him say 3 to 5% more the rest of the year, it doesn't sound like much, but you're like, geez Louise, it's already gone up so much. I mean, that puts us, in the last 12 months, we're up well into the double digits, 12, 13%. That puts us, on track for even more by the end of the year. In a perfect world, we get Goldilocks. We get 3 to 5% year after year after year. That is a good market for everyone, where sellers are making money and buyers are able to get homes without paying through the nose. And I say, Jeb, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. The thing that makes it really hard for me to gauge, are home values really going up, or do we have these agents that are obsessed with sending out a postcard when their house closes, their sale closes, saying how much over list they sold the home for? It's really rare. It's really rare that we see a home in our market come on the market that's priced realistically. It's massively underpriced. You're like, I don't know. I don't know as a seller that I want to deal with 40 or 50 offers on my home. Price it right and deal with 7 or 8 offers.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know I sold property based on my social media because I never post anything, whereas every other agent's posting everything they sold, how much is sold over the asking, how many offers they had, so on and so forth. And I feel like that only adds to this whole, stigma out there with what the market's doing. I think, I don't feel like that. I don't know. It's frustrating a little bit just because I feel like that just continues to kind of move this thing along. Whereas, if agents weren't posting that, people would probably back down a little bit. But who's to say? It's hard to say.
And if you look, Jeb, when you look at the figures, there's a reason why the Case-Shiller home price index is considered the gold standard of home price indexes. It was the first one that did a paired sales analysis. So it's same home selling over a period of time. So they have a massive data set and it's controlling for that stuff. Case-Shiller and other paired sales indexes, they have no concern in the world what an agent asked or listed the price for. They're just looking at what did they sell for and what did that move at over time. So if you just look at list to sales price, it's like, oh my goodness, these homes are going through the roof. But it's really, if they were priced accurately, yes, the home values are going up still pretty quickly and rapidly, or have so far this year, but not nearly as bad as you would think by how much homes are selling over list price.
Agreed. Angelize.
Angelize.
I got it, bro. It took me a minute. It's like reading a license plate. It takes me a little minute.
Listen,
I gotta put in all the numbers and
if there's one thing this guy knows, it's Angelize.
Well, there you go. Angela, did you hear that? I don't know that he was talking about you. That's his wife, by the way. Not Angelize, because I called you Angela. Anyway, do you recommend going with an attorney for your realtor? With an attorney your realtor works with or your own? I pay for a benefit through my job that includes an attorney for home purchase, but I'm wondering if that's the best option. So, here in the state of California, we don't deal with attorneys. What I would say is if you trust your real estate agent, then perhaps you use their attorney. But it never hurts to get a second opinion, right? If yours is provided through your job, it doesn't cost you any money. The other one's going to cost you money. Maybe you do that. I've had several cases, here in California, we deal with escrow companies, right? Same thing. Well, not the same thing, but typically they do what the attorney does in attorney states. And that's facilitate the closing. And I've had clients come to me before and say, listen, I have a relationship with an escrow company or whatever. That's the company that I want to use, or I've priced it out and this is who I want to go with. And as the agent, that's what you do, right? I mean, typically we like to use service providers that we know are going to do a good job, that we know that are going to do what they say they're going to do. And if something goes wrong, we have the ability to call the big guns in and make things happen. I mean, that's why I choose the service providers that I do. Sometimes when you go out to these other parties, you might not have that pull. So just keep that in mind. But I would say if you trust your agent, maybe you go that direction, but compare them. And if one's willing to do it for a lot less, then you maybe go back to the other one and say, hey, listen, this one's willing to do it. Are you willing to do that? It's maybe a little bit of negotiation up front. A lot of people don't realize that some of these fees can be negotiated, even though they're coming from the seller side, the seller's choosing those parties. A lot of times these companies will negotiate on those fees. So now it's not a substantial amount, but a couple $100 here and there can make a difference. So just keep that in mind if you're out there searching. Dorothy is asking, what is an MCC? So we touched on that at the beginning. I'm assuming that's where your question's coming from. It's a mortgage credit certificate. Josh mentioned it. I would go back into the first probably 8 minutes of the video tonight and check it out. It's one of the first, I think it's the first question that we actually, or second question that we answered today. So go back and watch that. Great explanation there. Not going to put Josh through that again. Let's see here. We got a lot of people saying make the video.
We have an important one here that Ray Campos is saying Bucks won and the Josh was wrong. Make him wear a Giannis jersey. Now, I want to go back to the video on this one. I believe what I said is I wanted CP3 to get his ring, but I thought if Giannis was healthy, if he was healthy, they would win. So let's see. I got to go back to the video.
But I remember you did say that, but you also said that you thought that CP3 Yeah, CB3 would get his ring. So I think you predicted the
As
Suns.
long as Giannis wasn't healthy, my man's dropping 50 on him. How much more healthy could he possibly be?
Oh Jesus! I just read a comment as you were talking and just started laughing out loud. So I'll get to that in a sec. Got people talking about I should do the video. So I'll probably do the video. I think it's worth doing, and I think it's good information, right? It's good information for any agent out there, because it makes you a better agent, and it makes the experience better. Miss Taylor says she has a listing agent horror story. Bet you've heard nothing like it. I would love to hear it.
I'll bet you we have, though. I'll bet you we have.
I don't know. I'm interested. I love stories like this.
I'll add more to the library happily. We've got some crazy ones.
We can do one where we send out the link to this thing and we can have people on here just talking about their stories. That could be good too. But yeah, email me. Let's have a conversation. I would love to hear it. I can make good videos out of that stuff and help other people. But Michael Duree says the first time he drank a bang, he felt like he was going to headbutt the mirror off his truck. Oh, that's classic. Yeah, that thing has like 300 milligrams of caffeine in it, right? It's something crazy. These things are, I don't really drink energy drinks, but today I was kind of feeling a little sluggish and I thought 300 milligrams of caffeine. Yeah, it's like more than 2 cups of coffee. Yeah, guys, but I have no problem sleeping. I could fall asleep right now at the desk and just pass out. Let's see here. Rachie. I'm about to headbutt the camera. Rachie says, I bought a model home, close in a couple of weeks. What should she expect? So buying a model home, not really a lot to do there, but I would tell you that, get a home inspection if you can. I'm sure you can get a home inspection, make sure, even though it's a model home, there's a chance there are things that need to be corrected, fixed, all that good stuff. But closing, how's the closing process work on a loan, Josh? So I'm a buyer. I get my appraisal done. The appraisal is completed. You've asked me for a bunch of documentation. You want updated bank statements. You want my HR department to fill out my employment verification. We're all good. We've released contingencies on the house. What happens, once all of that's done? How does the closing work on a property?
So let's say you're clear to close. You got your loan approval. Like you said, you've provided everything, so we're clear to close. The lender's going to do a couple things. They're going to do a verbal verification of employment to make sure that you haven't lost your job since we did the original verification. They're going to prepare your loan documents, and they're going to send them to escrow. So the escrow office is going to prepare your loan documents, which means looking anything that they still need signatures on. A lot of times people don't sign their escrow instructions. So escrow instructions, estimates from their end. They have an estimated settlement statement. So there'll be a handful of documents that escrow or the attorney has for you to sign, or title, depending on where you're at. There's going to be your complete set of loan documents. I tell everyone in there, the only things that matter to you are the first payment letter. We need to make sure that that's saying the correct payment. The note is what actually creates the debt. So you want to make sure that your interest rate is correct, that your loan amount is correct, and that your monthly payment is correct. And those are really the things that you want to look at. We'll go through the deed just so you can make sure that your names appear correctly on the deed of trust or the mortgage, depending on where you are. But from that, you're going to get in, you're going to sign your loan documents. That stuff is all going to go back to the lender. Lender checks, make sure everything's in line, and then they fund the loan. So much like you're going to send in your final funds to escrow, the lender sends the rest of the funds, the amount from your loan, over to escrow. And at that point, then escrow releases the loan to record, or the deed or the mortgage to record, and the home becomes yours.
All right. Yeah. And so that process can obviously change a little bit in either direction, right? I mean, but the idea is that that's pretty much the direction that it goes. And depending on what you've adjusted with regards to the closing time frame with your real estate agent or with the seller, you might close and get the keys 3 days later. You might get them on the day of the close, that sort of thing. It's a lot of people think, hey, as soon as I sign my loan documents, the keys are mine, the deal's done. No, it's not done until that thing is recorded with the county. I've seen deals pull back at the last minute for various reasons in doing this. And I know Josh has as well, where things do fall apart for various reasons. So it's not done until it's done. But whatever you've negotiated with regards to getting the keys will happen after it records. So,
well, I told you, Jeb, the other week we had one that fell apart after the wire went out. Buyer sent his money in, lender sent their money in. We're waiting for the okay to record, and there was a problem on the up leg, the seller's property that we had nothing to do with, and the deal fell apart at that point, even though the wire was done. And Jeb, Rachie actually followed up with a cool follow up here because I was going to actually mention this. It says yes, but they, again, the builder wanted to do 2 walkthroughs. They need to convert the garage. So it's an interesting part about buying a model home. Model home, a lot of times the garage is the sales office. They have to convert that. It's not like the new home that no one's been through. People have been walking through it. There's been furniture in there. Things can get banged up, beat up. So those walkthroughs are really important for you if you ever end up buying a model home. They're cool because they've been upgraded and you can see exactly what they look like, but there can be some additional issues with them that you don't have with a standard new build.
No, absolutely. Good point there. And if you want an office in your garage, just tell them to leave it.
Just leave it. Work
But
from
you won't have a
home.
garage. Yeah. All right. So let's see here. Let's ask a favor. If you're watching this right now, 209 of us, or 9 of you guys, and you appreciate the content, Josh and I are here every week. Do this to help educate, empower, guide you guys through the process. Hit that like button, help more people see it. In fact, we have a little. You can't even see that. Look at that. Boom. Hey, hit the like button and subscribe. This is as fancy as I can get, guys. You don't understand. I have no creativity, no graphic design. This is, people are like, why don't you do better editing on your videos? This is the best editing I can do, guys. I mean, I'm giving you the best I got. Anyway,
to his credit, he doesn't let it stop him. That's the important part.
And I'm a computer science major. A lot of you guys don't know that, but so I know computers. I can fix a computer. I can build a computer. I can't program one anymore. I'm pretty sure I forgot how to do all of that. But I understand technology. But when it comes to graphics and all that good stuff, I'm not the guy. Anyway, I digress and we shall move on here.
I got a couple here that are
Let's hear it.
same commenter, but they're really just comments, but I think it's going to spark a good little discussion here. So I am misread says, although I really like my realtor, she's really bad at returning my calls and texts regarding business. I'm not calling her to see how her day went. I'm calling to conduct business. And then the follow-up here, not just to bash on the realtor. Sorry to say, same for my lender. I need a new lender and a realtor. So again, she's reached her own conclusion here. You need a new lender and a realtor. I mean, there's the most important thing in the process is the communication. Jeb and I were talking, not here to toot Jeb's horn, but one of Jeb's superpowers is being able to have difficult conversations. If you can't get on the phone and get different things go wrong. This is not an easy process. Things don't go smoothly. You have to be willing and able to jump on the phone and get ahead of things. Bad news never gets better. It doesn't age well.
Exactly.
So any of this
get it
stuff,
out of the way.
Yep. If they're too busy for you, then you need someone who's not, because literally the most important people I have in my life are my in-process clients. We love the new ones that we're getting qualified, but the ones that need the most attention are the people that are in process. It's the most stressful, most difficult, and you just have to communicate with them. So I'm sorry to hear you're going through that, but unfortunately, Jeb mentioned earlier, he said, I chuckled when he said we have 1 million realtors in America, literally. Well, the number was earlier in the year, in February or so, when the listings were at their all-time low, we had more realtors than homes.
We have them right now. We have more realtors.
Still?
Yeah. So I saw the stat the other day. There's more realtors in the United States than there are homes for sale. But understand, that won't be like that forever. Inventory will pick up. Realtors will eventually, they'll keep their license. A lot of them do, but they won't actively sell property. They'll realize that it's not what they thought it was rather. Let's see here. But anyway, if you need, back to your comment there, if you need a realtor lender, reach out. We're happy to put you in touch with somebody that can help. Tony has a question. Running into an issue where I can offer over asking, but not enough cash if appraisal comes in tens of thousands below purchase. I get an email from Better today with their new appraisal guarantee. Half. So I'm assuming Better is saying that they'll pay half of the difference if the appraisal comes in lower.
Hold on. He's just telling you that's post 1 of 2. We got 2 of 2 here.
Where they okay, got it. Where they claim you will not have to pay the gap in cash. Probably not a deal if you dig into the details, but wondering if this is going to drive prices and competition even more. So I'm not familiar with Better other than knowing that they're an online lender. A lot of marketing gimmicks with anybody that does things online, right? They've got mortgages to sell. They've got a big overhead. Take the largest lenders out there. They're doing a ton of online marketing. They're doing a ton of marketing on the radio, generating, they've got to generate business. My guess is it's not the way it's read. There's no way they're going to make up a $50,000 appraisal gap on a property. It's not going to do that. They're not going to finance more on that property than it's worth, because they got to go around it. They got to sell that loan on the secondary market to someone, and they got to be able to provide information in that documentation that shows that the loan to value is there, right? They can't just make loans at whatever they want unless they're planning on servicing those and keeping those loans on the books. And I can guarantee you they're not going to do that. So I would tell you to read into the details of that. Josh, do you know anything about it? Or are you reading on it now?
I'm trying to. It looks
so. We'll come back to it. So
yeah.
I'll let Josh dive into it here, and I'll try to find another question. Let's see what we got. All right. Let's see. Refi just a couple months ago in South LA had an FHA 30-year fixed at 3.375%. Got a conventional loan, 20 years, 2.625% for $300K. How do I calculate the savings and if I got a good deal? Thanks. So you already refinanced. So I would tell you less concerned about the deal at this point.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. But what I would tell you is that, I mean, looking at it right off the top of my head, depending on when you actually close that conventional loan. So Josh and I, we looked at my loan, right? So I closed a loan back in August of last year. I think I did it. So I refinanced last August when rates got below 3%. I got 2.99% on my loan. And Josh, because of rates have come down considerably in the last week, Josh and I talked on Monday or Tuesday, and you said, "Hey, listen, what do you think about refinancing?" I said, "Well, run the numbers." And so he ran numbers on my mortgage. My mortgage is more than yours, but it's under the conforming loan limit. And I'm at 2.99. And I think if I did a 20-year, the rate was going to go down to 2.25, if I remember correctly. And if I just did, I think I owe 25 or so years on my loan at this point. If I did the same, it was going to be around 2.5%, I think. So I was going to save a little bit, but to me, it just didn't make enough sense at the moment, because I do think rates could trend lower. And I'm looking to take advantage of that. So if I look at your rate at a 20-year at 2.625%, depending on how much you're financing, I don't know what your loan to value is at this point, because you had a 30-year fix. So I don't know where your loan to value is, but it sounds like you might be able to get something in the low 2% range if you actually have the equity there. But it's neither here nor there. You've already done it at this point, but I would tell you, if you want to consider something, reach out. I'll put you in touch with Josh, and you guys can actually compare the numbers side by side and see what makes sense. I mean, that's what him and I did for my loan, right? Hey, this is where my numbers are now. Where's this going to put me? Okay, it's going to save me, $150 a month. Okay, is it worth it to me to do that? I mean, $150 is $150, but if I think rates could go lower, then maybe I'll wait and see what happens, right? I'm willing to gamble because I'm at a good rate and I'm comfortable and all that good stuff, but you got to decide what's right for you.
And when we get questions like this after the fact, things that I always like to tell people, Jeb's rate is not the same as Fernando's rate. So what could be the big differences? Property type, loan to value, how much you owe relative to what the home is worth, and credit scores. And then the last thing, when we're looking, hey, I got 2.625 on a 20-year, is it good? Well, we need to know all those three things, and to know whether that was a good deal or not. Did we get a lender credit and you paid nothing for that loan, so that if you want to redo it in 6 months when rates drop, then it may be a good deal. If you paid 2 points for it, it could be a horrific deal. So there's more that goes into it than just saying, I got this rate, was it a good deal? And remember, everyone lies when they're at dinner parties and backyard barbecues. I've never heard someone say a real interest rate that
I just
they got
told you
on their
mine.
loan.
Mine was 2.99, man.
Jeb is the only one who's
I'm just
ever
drinking
told me
bang and doing lives, man. No
real
barbecue here, but I'm being honest.
Yeah, the numbers that we hear from people, or even the numbers here in the comment section, someone will post this and it's just a matter of time until someone says, I got 1% on a 20-year just 2 weeks ago. You got screwed.
Nope, absolutely. And like Josh says, nobody remembers their rate 3 or 4 months into the thing anyway. They always think they have something different. So here we go. I'm not going there. What happens to our equity when the Great Reset occurs? Edward, you can enlighten me on what the Great Reset is and when it's coming, and I'll give you my take on the equity. I don't see anything happening with equity, so that's my 2 cents on that.
Jeb, here's actually a good one here. It's a follow-up. The person said, and I'm going to take them out of order here. So DS says, New York is not 1%. So we're talking about closing costs. And there are high closing cost states, and New York is a high cost closing state. So thank you to DS for pointing that out. They follow up with 3%. Ha ha ha, try 5%. I don't know if that's accurate or if it's that bad, but there are high cost closing states. Some of them have taxes. I know New York loves to tax real estate transactions. So those numbers can get much higher. So like Jeb and I always say, get with a local expert that knows your market, that can tell you exactly what those numbers look like. Our buddy Ben Lavender out there in New York could tell you exactly what that's going to look like.
Exactly. There you go. Let's see. We got Rachie asking again, how do I find good realtors to work with in my area, Seattle? Any websites like Yelp ratings? Honestly, there's not, right? I mean, what I would tell you is try to find a realtor through a referral source, somebody that's had a good experience, somebody that knows agents in the area. That's your best opportunity to have a good experience. I mean, honestly, most of my business, 90+% of my business has always been past clients, friends, family, all relational. That's the best source for having a great experience. So I would say use myself, use another agent, or somebody that that had a great experience. Find out somebody that they know, like, and trust, and have a conversation with that person. Doesn't mean you have to go with them, but have a conversation. I know a couple of agents in Seattle and or the areas around Seattle, and I'm happy to put you in touch with somebody if you need them. And the same goes for lenders, right? I mean, and it's okay to talk to a couple, right? Just because I refer you one, Josh refers you one, your neighbor refers you one, doesn't mean you have to go with any of them, but it's good to have a conversation and you can decide, who you want to go with. I mean, I don't win every listing appointment I go on. I don't win every buyer appointment that I go on. I have a lot of conversations, and quite frankly, some of these I don't want to work with to begin with. So it's mutual. It goes both ways. Sometimes you communicate well with someone and you don't with another, and that's the way the business works. But that's the best way. And then once you've been referred to someone, then you go check their referral sources, right? Go check their Google reviews. Go check their reviews on some of these other sites. The problem with Yelp, I'm going to throw them under the bus here, is that they more or less, I've got, I don't know how many Yelp reviews, let's say 50. If you went and searched my name and looked under Yelp, you would only see about 20, because they don't believe, so to speak, that the other referral or testimonials are actually legit. But if I paid to be a Yelp person or whatever they're marketing, then they would start to show those. So it's this whole game. So don't just count on Yelp. Just like Amazon, you go look at a product on Amazon. Let me tell you a secret here. They pay for a lot of reviews. I know several people that get products every single month for free that they have to go leave a positive review on those sites. So just understand what you're getting into when you start looking at review sites and all of that stuff. Take it with a grain of salt. Start with the referral, then go check the resources and read them. And a lot of times you can tell how they're written, if it's legit or not. And then ask, I'll say one more thing, and then Josh can, give his opinion here. But listen, you want to talk to, all of my sales are public, right? So you go to Zillow, you can see the last couple sales that I've done, whatever. You can see the majority of them. Sometimes some things happen off market or whatever, but the majority of them are out there. Go look at a property and say, hey, listen, can you give me the name and number of so-and-so that you sold? I'll give you the name and number to any person that I've closed a property with. And without me calling them, you can have a conversation and see where it goes, right? That's the kind of person that you want. That's the kind of transparency you want on the other side, is somebody that's willing to give you the names and numbers of the people that they've sold property to, let you pick, and then go have a conversation, and you can decide if they're a good fit or not. Josh?
You read my mind. They're saying online tools or websites. Zillow started pulling sales information, and it's valid in most areas. It's not perfect, but it's valid, and it's a single data point. So I'm not saying, hey, talk to 3 realtors, go look at Zillow and whoever sold the most homes, because oftentimes a super producer has a big team. You're going to get shuffled off to someone else. You're not going to get personal attention. But what I will say is, talk to a person or two. go out to Zillow, make sure they've sold 5, 6, 7 homes in the last year. I don't know how you can be great at it if you're doing much less than that. But that being said, I do know I have a couple of realtors that are basically semi-retired. They might sell 2 or 3 homes a year, and they're awesome. But why? Why are they doing 2 or 3? Because they do it because they like it for past clients. There's got to be a reason there. So everything is just a data point. All the things that Jeb said are accurate. Take them all into account and kind of go with your gut. And the other thing that Jeb said that's 100% true, I don't win 100% of the deals of people that we talk to. And when we sit here and talk with my team of who are the people that we're willing to let go, there are certain people that are going to be more effort than they're worth. Our job is to make sure we get enough introductions to enough awesome people that we don't have to try to work with everyone. And a realtor or a lender that doesn't have that type of deal flow or options coming to them will try to work with everyone, and it'll be bad for them. It'll be bad for the buyer. Doesn't mean a bad thing about either one of you. It's just everyone's not a perfect fit for everyone. I would love to think I'm awesome and that every person in the world should work with me, but not everyone's a perfect fit for me or for Jeb or anyone else for that matter.
No, and the last thing I'll say is if you ask me the definition of success as far as real estate goes, I would say getting to a point in your career where you can turn down listings. You can turn down buyers because they're not a good fit for you. Because there's a lot of people out there, like Josh said, that'll try to make it work when it's not a good fit. I mean, I've turned down many listings, many buyers over time, and you got to get in that position where it's, and as a buyer, you're going to know, right, whether or not it's a good fit. And so just, again, use all the other information, but don't just make a decision based on a review online.
So, Jeb,
right.
Can we just stick to only answering Rishi's questions? It says how to stop investors calling to buy your home. Tell them you have a meth lab in the basement. And I would say this would be a very bad way to go about it, because the greatest deal that I ever got on a home, it wasn't in the basement, it was in the garage. But we bought a house for $118,000 that we sold 6 months later for $400,000 because it had a meth lab in the garage, and it was tagged by the government because that can be problematic. And it was a monstrous pain in the ass. Cost us about $30,000 just to get the garage back inhabitable. But we got a spectacular discount. So don't tell them you have a meth
based
lab.
on your profit margin there. I think it sounds like 30 grand was probably worth it in that deal. Got a good question here. Let's see. Cash flow king realist. That's intense. Can you lie about the home size in a listing? Easy answer is no, you cannot. Do people exaggerate? I see it oftentimes. Square footage is not accurate. There have been several cases, in fact, here in California, and this is going back a couple years. I'm the worst on time frame. When I say something happened 6 months ago, it could have happened 6 years ago, or it could have happened 6 days ago. But there was a case here in California. Somebody bought multi-million-dollar property, and square footage was incorrect. Buyer didn't do their due diligence or whatever. Anyway, seller, the deal closed. Both agents got sued. So listing agent, buyer's agent both got sued, and the seller got sued in the deal. And basically what it came down to was that everybody should have done their due diligence, whether it's the seller, the buyer, the agent, whoever it is, should do their due diligence. So what you don't see in the private remarks on the MLS, because you see the description, the private remarks most of the time says information is deemed accurate, but it's not reliable. Buyer's agent to do their own diligence to verify square footage, blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's putting it back on the buyer and the buyer's agent to say, hey, listen, make sure you do due diligence with regards to square foot. Now, most of the time what happens is, here locally, when we put something in the MLS, that information is pulled directly from the tax records, right? So, whatever shows on tax records is what is populated in the MLS. Now, sometimes that's wrong because, an addition's been done and the floor plan's been updated. The city never actually filed the information. Sometimes the agent says, well, there's an addition on the back. Even though it's not permitted, I'm going to add that additional 400 feet into the square footage and whatever. If that's the case, it needs to be disclosed on the other side. But to answer the question, no, nobody can lie about it and actually and it not come back to affect them unless no one does anything about it. It should be transparency across the board with that sort of thing. So just understand, but oftentimes you'll see properties that say they're a 3-bedroom when they're a 2 because one of the bedrooms was converted, or maybe one of the bedrooms is a loft or whatever. So as a buyer, it's on you, for one, to make sure the information is accurate. And when you get an appraisal on a property, the appraiser is going to tape it, right? They're going to shoot it with a laser or run a tape across it and give you a pretty accurate idea of the square footage of the property. But theirs is still a little, it's not 1000% accurate. Even in that case, because of but it's probably going to be the most accurate of anything that's completed. But when you're getting appraisal waivers and not doing appraisals and that sort of thing, that's where things can come back to bite you. Anyway. All right. Let's see. I saw a question up here that I skipped over by accident. So Lovely M. Hello from Pennsylvania. I was looking at homes and read the description on one that is part of a first look initiative. Is this a new thing? I've never heard of this. So I've heard of first look initiative. Josh, you aware of this at all? It rings a bell,
like
but
like a coming soon listing. It's just a different fancy word for a coming soon listing.
Let's see here. I'm going to look it up while we're here. So it looks like it's Freddie Mac. Okay, so it's a home steps program. So instead of keeping you here, so basically what it looks like is it's Freddie Mac's first look initiative. So they'll offer home buyers and select nonprofits an exclusive opportunity to purchase home steps homes prior to competition from investors through the Freddie Mac first look initiative. So it's part of these neighborhood stabilization programs. It looks like, in Nevada County, Detroit, blah, 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 that they'll give you 20 days to put an offer in on a property prior to investors being able to have that opportunity. So I'm not familiar with it, to be completely honest. I probably should look into it because of these types of questions. But, if you want more information, you can reach out to me directly or just Google it like I did and you'll get a little bit more information. But it sounds like maybe it's an opportunity for you to get in before investors are able to buy those properties. And, back in my days when I sold a lot of foreclosed properties, REOs, back in the last downturn for Fannie Mae, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. And, we had these little periods of time where we wouldn't allow any investor offers, right? So the properties would come to market and they would give, buyers that were going to occupy those properties first opportunity to put in an offer. And at so many days, if something didn't happen, then they would consider us, the investor offer at that point. It sounds like that's kind of what they're doing. But typically speaking, when Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae or one of these companies is listing the property, it's because it's something that's foreclosed. They've taken it back and it's coming back on the market. So it's a property that they own. And it sounds like that's what they're doing here. So that's the best I can give you without doing a lot of research.
A lot of support in Washington, D.C. for expanding this to any properties that end up owned by Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA. And it's largely to combat the things that we're seeing with giant institutional buyers coming in and buying up homes and making it harder for actual homeowners to get in on the entry-level homes. Jeb, why don't you tell them the little story you were telling me about yesterday?
What was I telling you yesterday?
The $2 billion the $2 billion fund coming in.
Oh, $5 billion.
$5 billion.
Yeah, $5 billion. I did a video on it. Some of you guys probably saw it, but what is it? One of the largest landlords that's out there right now. I think they own 28,000 properties. I think that's what they own, 28,000, if I remember correctly. Anyway, they put a fund together with a pension fund and a sovereign wealth fund. And they plan to buy $5 billion worth of properties over the next 3 years in the Sun Belt. And that essentially equates to, I think, 18,000 properties. So 6,000 a year is what they're looking to purchase. So that sort of thing. You've got, big money coming into some of these markets, and they're looking at properties around 250,000 in this article that I referenced. So, California and some of these other areas aren't going to be necessarily affected by companies like this. But if you're in a market that has lower priced homes, now, when I say lower priced, you're probably thinking you're crazy. 250,000 is a lot of money. And I understand that, but the median home price right now is about 350,000 across the United States. So when you start getting homes valued under that, you're going to start having these companies come in and buy rental property. And that's essentially what's happening here, because they're expecting the rental market to be, in high demand for quite some time. In this article, they said they get an average of 6,000 calls on properties when they only have 200 available. So, I mean, they started looking at the numbers going, well, we should buy more investment property. And yeah, clearly that's what you should do.
It would be good to have more of these.
Yeah. And so you got to think about it. I mean, as homes become, more expensive, less people can afford them, they still have to rent something. Right. And boomers moving, or not boomers, millennials moving out of a home with their parents, graduating college, getting their own properties, they're going to rent something. So rentals are going to be in high demand, and they're capitalizing on it. Now, is it fair? Not really, but it's capitalism at its best, right? I mean, it's not great. It's not great for the housing market, but I see more of it probably likely going to happen, over the next couple of years as inventory is depleted, if you will. All right. Rajagopal Chandrasekaran. I can't even say that if I had it. Sorry, I just butchered your name. How does property taxes work after a new sale? For example, if the house sale closed on August 1st, the new owners pay taxes only for the 5 months of the year based on the sales price. So, Josh, how do property taxes work? We talked a video last month where we used some dates, but let's just say you closed on June 30th. Let's start with a fresh July 1st close date. How does it work with property taxes moving forward?
So what will happen is, as the buyer, you will pay a prorated portion of the taxes. Assuming the taxes have already been paid, it sounds like you're in a state that sanely only pays their taxes once a year, property taxes once a year. So if the seller's already paid for that year, exactly what you said, you would pay back to the seller, because the property taxes have already been paid, but they were paid by the seller. The portion of the remaining portion of the year that you're going to utilize or own the home, you will pay back the seller that portion. So again, in August, we would have September, October, November, December left, and a portion of August. So 4.5 months. Escrow or title, the settlement agent will prorate that out and charge you accordingly at closing, a debit to you on your side of the closing statement and a credit to the seller on their side of the closing statement.
All right, there you go. And then you might have help me out here, Josh. Supplementals, yes. And so supplementals, after your tax bill gets adjusted from where you purchased it versus where the previous owner owned that property, you're here in the state of California, you have a supplemental tax bill, which takes, that difference in those property taxes, and you're going to get a second bill a lot of times after the close of escrow, factoring in those taxes. So if you have questions on that, make sure you ask your lender how that works so that you're not surprised if you happen to get one of those bills. Because it could be, if you're in a state with high property values, it can be quite a shock.
Jeb, we got a follow up here. DS, right. Again, they were the person in New York that popped up saying, hey, 3 to 5%. But it says closing costs listed on my paperwork is 5.5% of total price of the home, but it includes 10 months of taxes. This is exactly what we were talking about before. The taxes are not a closing cost. They're a cost that you pay at closing. They are not a closing cost. That is a prepaid item. So anything that's going to be an ongoing cost of home ownership, property taxes, you're going to pay every year. Homeowners insurance, you're going to pay every year. Interest, you're going to pay as long as you have a mortgage every month. Any of those amounts that are collected at closing are not closing costs. They are prepaids. So in our California example, we said 1%, slightly less than 1% for closing costs, and about the same for prepaids. Takes you to 1.5%, 2% total. In a higher closing cost state like New York, it can absolutely be higher. And depending on how high your property tax is, maybe that's why it pushes up to 5.5%.
All right. Let's see. Astrid H, 2009. So I have an Astrid that lives down the street from me. It's the only other Astrid I know. Writing the sellers a letter really worked to get them to accept your offer. Can we be personal? Because I've heard yes and no. So again, we've talked about this. lot of states are not allowing this, or Oregon has outlawed this. Fair housing says you shouldn't do this. So if you do this for whatever reason, the seller says you can do it, or your agent says to do it, keep it as vague as possible. Keep it more about the property, less about you. It can't truly be personal because of fair housing. So the answer is really no. But could it? Yeah, we used to use these to get sellers to accept offers. The idea is to try to get, an emotional response from the seller, right? People buy emotionally, they justify logically. People sell emotionally, they justify logically. It's an emotional process. You want to try to grab as much of that as possible, but because of fair housing, it's becoming more of an issue. So Manpinder 28, do you think home prices will go down as lumber prices are dipping? No, I don't. I don't think the two are tied directly to each other, except for on new construction. It's obviously the prices to build some of these properties have gone up because of prices of lumber, but lumber prices are purchased on futures contracts. It's going to take some time for that to work its way through the system, for prices to actually come back down. And as far as, lumber prices have never really affected existing home sales anyway. It was more of new construction that they were affecting the price of those properties. And let me tell you, new builders are going to continue to charge the prices that they've become accustomed to, as long as people are willing to pay them. So until you see a drop off in demand on new construction, you're not going to see any reduction in those prices. Plus, that whole thing needs to work its way through the system anyway, with prices coming back down. So that's going to be a little bit before that happens. But I got a question for you, Josh. Cash Flow King Realist is 75. Is 75 a good FICO?
It's not.
It's 755.
Is a poor FICO.
755. So FICO still range from 350 to 850. Is that
depending on where you see it, 830, 850. But
right. So 755. How's that fit in the big picture?
So about 20% of Americans have credit scores above 800, and about another 25% fall in that 750 to 800 range. So at 750 and above, you're in the top 50%. Probably the thing that's more important to me is, what does it mean? Once you're above about 760, the likelihood of you defaulting on a mortgage is really, really low. Other credit is also low, not quite as low. So in terms of predictive ability, 755 is good. For most lenders, the only type of loan where you would want or possibly have a benefit of a higher credit score is jumbo loans. For Fannie and Freddie, 740 is the highest on their LLPA, their loan level price adjustment matrix. Nothing gets better after 740. So at 750, you're in the best tier. FHA, for all intents and purposes, 680 and above is going to be the best, and VA is about the same, although some lenders might get you better if you get into the low 700s. But on a jumbo loan, I've seen rate sheets that improve all the way up to 800. At 800, they pretty much consider that's their highest tier. But for the most part, 755 is a very good credit score. It puts you in the top half of the bell curve and gets you eligible for the best terms on loans.
All right. Rose is asking a question. What is considered a long time for a house to be sitting before I can expect to get the house below asking? I would tell you that it's all relative to your market, right? All real estate's local. Everybody's going to tell you that. But what does that actually mean? You got to see where houses have been selling. A home that's sitting on the market 2 weeks might be a long time in some markets. But the numbers that they normally use, I think, is around 90 days. At 90 days on the market, it becomes a buyer's market, if you will. When the average is 90 days. Now, if a home's sitting on the market in this environment, most of the time longer than a couple of weeks, depending on where you are, chances are it's either overpriced or something's wrong with it. Now, does that necessarily mean you can get it below asking? No, it doesn't. But I would say as homes start to sit a little bit longer, the chances of you being able to offer the asking price or maybe even below it increase. So I would say talk to a real estate agent in your market, find out what they think the value is, and then go from there, instead of trying to predict, time frames on offering below the asking price. You might be able to offer below asking price on the first day because it's overpriced. So don't just use the days on the market as your reference in how you make an offer on a property. Get an agent to run the comparables for you and make a decision from there. Oxygen. Oxygen. I like that. Kind of flows. Oxygen. Anyway, 600 applicants for 100 lots in Frisco, Texas. Yeah, that's crazy. That just shows you there's a lot of demand out there, people. It ain't all gone away. J Ryan 86. I'm a sole proprietor.
A soul man.
He's a soul man. I'm a soul. Now, and my lender is doing final underwriting before closing. What are they looking for? I had to give more bank statements. When should I be all good to get my home? Thanks, Josh.
So there's not really a final underwrite before closing. It's that you got a conditional approval and now you've provided those conditions and they're clearing those off and making sure that everything is in line. So what you're doing right now, having to give more bank statements, your loan officer could have asked you for that up front. It's a COVID overlay. Every loan program is making us do that. So as a sole proprietor, you're self-employed. So normally, historically, pre-COVID, all we required was a year-to-date profit and loss and you to sign and say, this is legit, this is accurate. Once COVID came along, lenders started worrying, hey, maybe all businesses aren't okay. Maybe it would be tempting for someone to write a profit and loss statement that says the finances are fine. We actually want to see receipts coming in that validate and confirm the amount of net income that we're seeing on the last tax return and on the year-to-date profit and loss. So they started out asking for 2 months most recent business bank statements to show receipts are still coming in. They expanded that to 3 months. So really they're looking to see, are you receiving enough gross income to support the net income that shows on your profit and loss and last year's tax return? But at this final underwrite, it's really just clearing the conditions that were on the conditional approval. And it could be anything. It could be an updated bank statement. I had one the other day that we didn't realize that our pay stub was a little bit blurred. We could tell what it said, but the underwriter just said, no, we need it to be perfect. So we had to go back and get that. So it's most likely nothing really that's out of line. But for a self-employed person, they are going to collect the 3 months bank statements and make sure that current receipts validate the income that they're qualifying you with.
All right. Laura has a question here. I have a good friend that's a realtor. Not sure I want to have my friend as my realtor. How do I have that conversation? Josh and I earlier talked about communication, right? Communication being key. Having that conversation is crucial, regardless of what business you're in, what you do for a living, good, bad news, whatever. Having the communication isn't going to change the facts, right? So the sooner you have it, the better off you're going to feel, the more relieved you're going to feel. But what I would say is, why don't you want to work with them? Is it because you feel like things could not work out and you don't want to tarnish a relationship? Do you not feel like they're an experienced agent? You don't feel like they're going to negotiate? Whatever it is, I think you got to have that conversation. Now, you don't have to be as blunt as I just was about, them not having the experience or whatever, but I think you need to have it and tell them why. Because if it's you value the friendship and you can say that, hey, listen, I'm a difficult person, I'm difficult to work with. Not saying that you are, but it's me, not you type of situation. That goes over a lot better than telling them that, they don't have the experience or whatever. But some people just need to hear that, right? If there's somebody that just got their license, they haven't done any sales, you don't want to be the guinea pig in this market. I don't think there's anything, wrong with having that conversation. I mean, I've had people tell me before, in fact, most of my friends are clients. And a lot of my clients have become friends. But I've had people tell me before that weren't really weren't really like real friends per se, acquaintances more, say, listen, we just don't do business with people we know. Okay. I mean, if that's truly the case, then how are you going to argue it? So I just think you need to figure out why and kind of boil down to the foundation of that reason and have that conversation. So
Jeb,
yep.
Jeb, you mentioned that you do business with a lot of friends. We have a lot of joint friends that we both work together, and we both have friends that we work with separately. How, if in any way, do you deal with a friend any differently than you do with a non-friend client that comes off of the internet or referred by a friend?
Honestly, there's not a lot of difference, right? I mean, it's, you kind of put your professional hat on, right? Maybe I'm a little bit more laxed in certain things with friends over people that aren't, but they're getting the same level of service. We're not skipping steps because they're a friend. We're having the same conversations, difficult or not. with regards to buying a house, selling a house, negotiations or whatever. We're not settling. We're not doing anything special. A lot of times for people that are friends that we're not doing on the other side. You're just, it's maybe more of the process about, actually showing property and that sort of thing. Maybe you're just a little more, open in some of the things you would say to a friend that maybe you wouldn't say to a client in some cases. I've stuck my foot in my mouth many times in my career, walked into a property and been like, this place is a dump, and then they end up buying it. And you're like, whoa, I probably shouldn't have said that. And friends, that sort of thing. It's one of those things that I feel like you could, you already have a feeling of who they are, what they like, and that sort of thing. So you can be a little bit more open on some of those things. But as far as the service that's provided in that, there's really no difference. I mean, you're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and really trying to make sure that everybody's, walks away happy, right? Because happy clients are your best, can become advocates of your business. And that's how your business grows if you do it right.
And I will say from our end, it's slightly different because we have to start with a different conversation. Realtor, you're going to go show them houses. You're going to have a ballpark idea of what they can afford. On the loan side, we fully get to see behind the kimono. Like there's no way to qualify for a loan without divulging everything for us to see. So I just start with the conversation saying, are you comfortable with that? I get it if you're not. And I say, here's what we do. Like, right. I don't go home and tell my wife your credit score or how much money you make. We're professionals, just like your doctor doesn't go and tell someone outside of the office. And for me, we see hundreds of sets of financial docs a year. They all look the same. They're no longer interesting. So just like your doctor doesn't find your body interesting because they see 10, 20 of them a day, I no longer see financial stuff as interesting. But if you're not comfortable with it, like my neighbor came to me last year and he said, hey, we're a Chase private client borrower, and I went to them, thought they would give me a good loan, and their loan terms suck. Will you do my loan? I said, well, are you cool with me knowing I know you're successful? I know you're a business owner. I know things go well, but I'm going to know your credit score. I'm going to know how much money's in the bank. I'm going to know all these things. He goes, I do not care. But I've also had people, when you kind of lay it out to them that way, they go, you know what? Do you have someone that you refer me to that you trust? And I totally get it if they decided to go that way. But when it's a realtor situation, I don't think being a friend would ever be a reason to not use them, other than there's something there that you're not comfortable with, that they would do the best job for you.
Yeah. And also understand, like, if I refer somebody to Josh, or we have mutual clients, like, I don't know anybody's financial position, right? I just know how much you qualify for based on the conversations we've had. Everything that I know is because you told me, not because anyone else told me. So just know that when and also we refer people not because we get anything out of it, other than we know that the deal is going to get done. That's why we refer business to people that we know, right? That's why I refer Josh. 100% success close rate here, knock on wood. But I know the deal is going to get done. I know what is told to me is accurate. I know that that you've asked the right questions. I know that we're not going to get to the finish line and things fall apart unless that buyer or borrower did something to change that. And that's the kind of trust you need in this business. So just understand, when people refer you, it's because, it's not necessarily that they're benefiting from it. They're trying to make sure that you're getting taken care of, so that you get to the finish line. Now, I can't say that for everyone, but that's typically why we refer people. That's why I refer people. All right. Let's move along here. So Felix has a question. Buying new construction, working with dual agent. So dual agent means that you're working with the listing agent as your buyer's agent as well. Some states don't allow this. Many do. Signed a lot hold agreement. An agency has been created, but haven't signed the purchase agreement. Is it possible to work with a different agent? That, have you signed a buyer broker agreement with that particular agent? Now, the fact that you signed the agency does say that they're representing you. But that builder, the builder may be willing to allow you to work with your own agent. But what I found with builders is that unless you had your agent come in initially to negotiate that deal, most builders are not going to work with an outside agent. That's just the experience that I've had. Because they know that you want to buy there. You showed up without an agent. kind of have you, if you will, with regards to doing that. But depending on their position, they may allow you have that conversation. If you're not comfortable working with them, why are you not comfortable working with them? Do you not feel like they have your best interest in mind? Have that conversation as well. But new construction, I would tell you, it's I'm a real estate agent, so obviously, everybody's saying you're going to say that because you're an agent, but you should have your own representation. New construction, right? We've talked about this many, many times. The purchase agreement that builders use is a stack of paper, and it's there to benefit them. In fact, there's a company out there who used to be an online website that showed you the values of their home. They're now a brokerage. There's a lot of information on this company buying properties right now. You get it where I'm going here. They're towards the end of the alphabet. They also have their own purchase agreement when they buy properties. They don't use the standard here in state of California residential purchase agreement that was, created by the California Association of Realtors to benefit both the buyer and the seller, because our purchase agreement does. It's there to really to make sure both parties are taken care of. When you have your own contract, typically it's written to protect you, not the other person. So just keep that in mind when you're signing these agreements out there, that it's a little one-sided a lot of times, if it's done that way. So anyway,
Jeb, we got a good one here.
Yep.
What about Ty says, what about the Cavers report? I never knew this until I did further research. It wasn't brought up during my first homeowners class. So what is Cavers? Cavers is the credit alert. Is that still around? It is, absolutely. It's the credit alert interactive voice response system. So if you are getting a government-backed loan, FHA, VA, USDA, the lender is required to check Cavers to see if you're in default on any federal debt. So what type of federal debt would you be in default on? Big one is student loans. So if we have defaulted student loans, it can be problematic. If you lost an FHA or a VA home in the past, that can be problematic. You owe the federal government for any reason, it would show up in there. And basically what they're saying is we're not going to loan you more money when we didn't get paid back on our past money. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to go and always clear it up by paying it off. There are other ways to clear it depending on what type of debt it is. But it is important that your lender check it early in the process, because there are things that will show up on Cavers that may not show up on your credit report. So it just comes out of left field and blows up a deal. So it's very important that Cavers is checked early in the process, so that you have time to work through it. Most times, or I shouldn't say most, many times it can be worked through and it's not a true deal killer. What I will say, it's incredibly rare for someone to have a Cavers claim. It wasn't as rare, say in 2010, 2011, 2012, when we were coming off the foreclosure crisis, and a lot of people did lose homes with FHA loans. The student loans can be a bigger deal for us right now, and then there's the miscellaneous federal debt. But it's something to be aware of. But people with good credit and have never defaulted on federal debt, it's nothing to worry about.
Okay, sorry, I was reading something. Let's see here. So, Prakash. Is there any way I can know the appraised value of a house? Does the MLS have it? Thank you. So no, the MLS does not have the appraised value of a property. Typically, you're only going to know the true appraised value of a property if you're buying it and you do an appraisal, and or the seller has a copy of the appraisal and they provided it to you, and or another buyer has gone through the process and has that. So outside of that, there's no way to really get the appraised value of a property. And then you go on to, now, if you have done an appraisal on a property, for example, you're buying the property and you get an appraisal on that property, they're required to give you a copy of that appraisal. Doesn't mean you'll know how to read it, but you'll get a copy of it, right? And in there is going to tell you the appraised value. So there's a second part of this question saying, why does the CMA not have the value of the house? It just says listed and sold, but not the appraised value by the lender. A CMA is a comparative market analysis, right? Comparing properties, coming up with an idea of value. That's completely separate than an appraisal. And that's usually someone outside of an appraiser's opinion of what the value is. And again, appraised value is listed nowhere other than, in that appraisal in most instances. So you need a copy of it. Go ahead.
With that, Jeb, the appraisal is the property of the person who ordered it.
Purchased it. Correct. Yep.
So if a seller buys an appraisal, then it's their appraisal. And they can do whatever they want with it, but there's no central repository or database for them to report or put that into. Now,
Unless it's FHA, right? You have an appraisal for 90 days or whatever.
It goes into the FHA's database. It's not a public database for anyone else other than lenders to access.
Right.
So it's not for you, a buyer, to know. It's not for the seller to know. And it's kind of important for you guys to know that when the appraisal is done, let's say I'm buying Jeb's house, I'm getting a loan. The appraisal is the property of the lender. I pay for it. It's their property. The law says I'm entitled to a copy of it. No one else is. And no one can be compelled to give anyone that. So if Jeb says, well, I want to know what the property appraised for, I think I gave you a smoking deal, I can say, go pound sand. I'm not giving it to you. It's mine. So there's no...
Were you going to say go pound sand?
I don't know.
Kick rocks? You had to correct yourself.
Kick rocks? I was going to say kick rocks.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
I prefer kick rocks. It's worse than pounding sand.
So Wendy Profit wants me to look at a house in downtown LA. I will do that after I get off here. I'll check it out. Alu 301's asking, can you send me information on realtors in the Chicago suburbs? I would say email me. I will put this up there. I don't know. I don't even know if I have it anymore.
Did you make a fancy new one, or do we
no,
have
I
old
didn't.
one?
There, I'll put that across the bottom. jebsmith.net/referral. Reach out there and I'll refer you to somebody. I know several realtors in Chicago. So depending on where you say suburbs, but depending on where you are, north, south, whatever, I can put you in touch with somebody. I know 3-4 agents in that market that I talk to on a regular basis that can definitely help put you or guide you in the right direction, rather. So that is that. Let's see. Terry Moore says he got 11% closing cost, 44 grand. Does that sound realistic, Josh?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Down payment with the FHA down payment 11%. Why did we do an 11% down payment on an FHA? FHA is
with FHA down payment 11% was 44 grand.
So
so I'm missing something there. I mean, because 11% would be just over 27 grand or something.
Yeah,
so
and on
there's
a $245,000 home, even in Texas, that's $7,500 of property taxes. Let's say you have horrific insurance, you're in a tornado or a hurricane area, $2,000, $3,000. So that's $10,000 in prepaids. Closing costs shouldn't be more than $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in your worst case in that instance. So I have no idea how we could get to $44,000.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, Terry. If you have closing statement, send it to Josh. Let him take a look at it. That would be an interesting story if you got charged 11%.
Yeah, more than happy to look at it.
There you go. I just saw a good question here. So Joe had a question. Hi, buying your first home in your mid 40s a concern. I'm worried about possibly paying it in my 70s if I can't make extra payments. So what I would tell you is you're going to be paying payments one way or the other, right? Whether it's a mortgage or you're paying rent. So had you rather own something and possibly get the appreciation? Maybe it turns into your retirement at 70, and you have the opportunity to take those, mortgage deductions off your taxes every year, property taxes, all that good stuff. But it's got to make sense, right? If you're going to be paying considerably more to own a house than it is to rent, then you may not. It's got to make sense. Josh would say the numbers never lie. Get a lender to run the numbers, see if it makes sense for you, see if you can buy something that fits the bill. And if you can, I would say go for it. I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, I would tell you the majority of people that own homes are never going to pay them off. That was something that boomers did. That's something that the 3 generations ago, that was their goal, right? Their goal was to pay off their property. And that's a goal of mine, but it's not the goal of a lot of people. A lot of people out there are like, you know what? I'm never going to pay off my mortgage and I'm okay with it. So you just got to figure out what your goals are, have a plan, and stick to it.
I love the question because most of our buyers that are 45 and above don't stop to think about it. And there's a bunch of layers to it. We all grew up saying, well, you work till you're 65 and then you retire. And if you remember your grandparents, well, you got a pension and you had some Social Security and your house was paid off and everything's good. Well, now homes are a lot more expensive. People are waiting longer to buy. Our median age for our first-time buyer is 33 now. So 40, 44, 45 is not old for a first-time buyer. I think it's an important thing to think of. Do you plan on working till you're 75? I think most people probably should, because we're living longer and it's taking longer to save up money. So in this instance, you have a 30-year mortgage and you work till you're 45, not a problem. But if you think you're going to retire at 65 and it's important to you to have the home paid for so that you don't have to have as much assets saved to live on in retirement, maybe we look at a 20-year loan, 15-year, 20-year loan. Maybe we don't buy a $600,000 house, we buy a $450,000 house. So they're great things to think, but what I would never say is don't buy a home, because Jeb already hinted at this, is you're making a housing payment one way or the other. If you can make the mortgage piece of it go away, if you look at the numbers, homeowners pay about half for shelter of what renters pay. So people think, oh, I can't afford to become a homeowner, I don't have long enough to pay it off, or I'm kicking the can down the road. You're going to get to retirement and you have to have a bigger nest egg to pay for what rent is going to look like in retirement. So it's a great idea to think about it and plan for it, but not buying is not an option. If you buy in the next 20 years, you're going to build up.
What if I want to live in my mom's basement forever?
Is mom going to die?
No,
Is she
never.
leaving the house to you when she does die?
I'm kidding.
No, so all those things come into play, and it's important to remember 20 years from now, 15 years from now, if you want to retire, you've built up equity in that home. You can sell it and go buy a mobile home at the river. You can go, buy a small mobile home in the middle of the country where it's cheaper. You can do a reverse mortgage. You have a lot more options than a renter who hasn't accumulated equity.
All right, so we're coming up. We're about 12 minutes or so, 15 minutes or so from the hour, being on here 2 hours. We're going to try to get through some questions here at the end. We're going to do kind of a rapid fire deal. We're going to just try to give you some answers without getting into a lot of detail, just to get through some of these. And if we have more time at the end, Josh and I'll just talk or something. But for now, don't hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you're watching this and you appreciate us being here. But let's start with this one, Josh. Once underwriting has given approval and rate is locked, can there be anything else preventing from closing?
Yeah, things change. You can lose your job. You can go buy a Maserati. You can do any number of things that would invalidate that approval. So like Jeb said earlier in the call, it's not over till it's over. So mind your P's and Q's all the way to the end.
Yep. And the seller, the seller could do something stupid and you decide not to move forward with that transaction as well. So there's a lot of things that could go on. I tell clients all the time, nothing is done until it's done, until it is absolutely keys are in your hand. Anything could go wrong. But I would tell you, once it's been approved, rate's been locked, you've released contingencies, you're 98% of the way through, assuming you don't do anything to affect that with regards to your credit, your income, that sort of thing. Let's see here. Rose is asking, Josh, what are some examples of how a lender can drop the ball and make the deal fall through? So we've always talked about buyers doing things. What can a lender do to screw it up?
Well, you and I went to dinner last night with my wife. She's a wholesale account executive, and she was telling a story about one of her friends who they were getting a loan through one of the big credit unions that specializes in helping veterans. They're supposed to close next week, and no one's ordered an appraisal yet. So not ordering an appraisal, not even opening the loan, not making the disclosures. Like this list is so long that we can't even limit it. The first guy that I worked for, there were two owners. One was awesome, taught me 50% of what I know and did everything right. The other guy was the one that would take your loan application, put it in his briefcase, and not turn it into processing till like 2 days before you were supposed to close, and throw it on them and say, hey, figure this out. So that happens. We have people, my wife's a wholesale rep. She has a broker that she works with, that this person's always like, we got to close tomorrow. You got to get docs out. Like, you just opened the loan 8 days ago. What are you talking about? And you see the credit was pulled 3 months ago and the contract on the purchase agreement was 3 weeks ago. So the lender, the loan officer, can do any number of things to shit the bed and cause you to have big problems.
Yeah. And what I would say is the next thing, and Josh just touched on, not asking the right questions up front, right? You being a self-employed business owner, you having whatever, and not asking the right questions to make sure that you're truly qualified to buy that property, could be another one. So there's a laundry list of them, but don't get in that position. Make sure you have a solid, experienced lender up front before getting that far into it where you have anything to concern yourself with. Michael has a question. Early signs of predatory lending practices. Josh, what are some early signs of that?
Well,
Anything?
first, I'm just going to say predatory lending it's not possible any longer.
Yeah.
There's maximums on what can be charged. If you went with the worst lender in the country, you're going to overpay, but you're not going to get just destroyed like you would have 10 or 15 years ago. Just not being honest, not returning calls. I wouldn't call it predatory lending, but that's a sign you're getting yourself in trouble. If they don't communicate, if they don't look you in the eye, if they can't give you pretty quick and easy answers to simple questions, those are your number one signs that you need to keep looking for someone else.
All right, let's ban fresh bans in here for pitching agents. Hey, sorry, adios. God, power. Feel like Gavin Newsom,
Drunk on
power,
power,
just
like
doing whatever
Gavin
I want to
Newsom.
do. I think I might shut down the state. What do you think about that, Josh?
It's executive
You
overreach.
can't go to work
Jeb.
tomorrow.
Executive
you cannot
overreach.
go to work. You know what? Next week, don't come to the office, and the week after that, don't come in either.
I don't have the option.
I know it's not going to be here. It's actually going to be here. It's not going to be anything in it. Anyway, that's how I feel about him. Not Josh, the other guy. Every time I get on, I have to thank you guys for helping me through the process. I have a medical collection, part 1. Let's see. I'm afraid that it will hit my credit. Will that affect my deal? And then she goes on. Oh, this is Judy. It works a lot better when this is all in one little box here. I'm afraid that it will hit my credit. Will it affect my deal? It's an FHA loan. So she has a medical collection, FHA loan. Is it going to affect her, Josh?
Most likely not. The next message says my closing is next Tuesday. A collection is not something that's likely to pop up on the undisclosed debt monitoring that the lender is using. And a medical collection can generally be resolved pretty easily. Most times it's an oversight. Either insurance was supposed to, or you thought they were supposed to pay the bill. You can usually get them deleted. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And unless we're talking about some spectacularly large medical collection in the thousands of dollars, you can resolve it if it were.
All right. I'm thirsty.
Me too. I want one of those girl drinks right there.
Let's see. What exactly is an appraisal waiver, Josh?
So an appraisal waiver, property inspection waiver is what Fannie Mae calls it. Freddie Mac calls it an automated collateral evaluation. It's when the file goes through automated underwriting and the automated underwriting system determines that no appraisal is needed. And the reason why they're able to do this is about 8 years ago, they started collecting. We used to just get appraisals as PDFs, and it would go in the file, and it was sort of all the data was locked in there. Now we get it as an XML file. It goes into Fannie and Freddie systems, so they have a record of every appraisal done in the last 8 years. It gives them an awesome database to compare, and their algorithms run on it, and they say, are we comfortable with the value? Now, that being said, you need bigger down payments. It's better qualified borrowers that get them, and they're more common in areas with excellent data.
All right, good stuff. Let's see here. We're getting close here. Got 5 minutes or so. Just closed my first home in Denver. Now 25% of my net worth is in real estate and the rest in stocks. If you were me, would you increase exposure to real estate, aka get rental property in this market? Tough to say. Everybody has a different risk tolerance with regards to what they're comfortable with. Rental property is one of those things that you've got to decide if you want to be a property manager or you want to hire a property manager. Why are you buying rental property? Is it for cash flow? Is it for appreciation? There's a lot more that goes into it than just deciding, where to stick your money. The thing with sticking it in real estate, right? It's not going to be as accessible as sticking it in something like equities. Diversification is a good thing. But I don't really have a solid answer for you either way. Josh, you're anything you want to add on that?
25% is a good chunk of exposure to real estate. If you wanted to ratchet it up to 35%, 40%, I wouldn't be against it. The biggest benefit for the common investor in real estate is that it's leveraged. Most people aren't buying properties free and clear and just putting cash down. The big institutional investors are, but the average guy isn't. So if you put even 33% down, you're at 3-to-1 leverage there on that property. So when the property goes up 3% in a year, you're actually getting a 9% return on your money. So I like it, but just don't get crazy with it. And it sounds like you are in a good spot to consider it if you got a property that made sense cash flow wise.
No, there you go. Good explanation. This is a quick one. Raxme. In today's market where home values are so high, how can you determine if a seller is simply asking for too much? Run the comparables. See, what the comparables support. If it's sitting on the market longer than, what the normal time frame in your market is, then they're probably asking too much. But typically you're looking at the data, right? The numbers never lie. Look at what homes are selling for in that market, and you can kind of determine whether or not somebody's asking too much. But the market will dictate that, pretty quickly. I tell sellers all the time. In fact, I just had one recently close, and the seller wanted to sell it for quite a bit more than I thought it was worth. And I said, listen, my job's here to help you get that amount. And this is a big number. And in 2 days, we had 2 offers. The hardest thing in this market is, as an agent, in my opinion, is to tell a seller what their house is going to sell for and to tell a buyer what they should offer on a property. Honestly, it is tough. And so, the market's going to dictate that price. So look at the comparables, wait a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and see where things are. And if, it's not moving, chances are it's overpriced. But there could be other things going on there too. Josh, let's finish up. Let's talk about rates. Let's end the call on interest rates. We've seen big numbers. We did 0.3% or so earlier. Well, not 0.3%, 0.25%. Plus, you got some adverse market fees being removed if you're refinancing. So there's some changes in interest rates. What's happening? Where are we today? Give us an update.
So we talk about this every week. We've been in a slow downtrend in rates, and we still are in that slow downtrend. We saw a nice pop lower on Monday. It was kind of flat Tuesday, and then gave it all back today. So without pulling out the charts and walking you guys through that and boring you to death, our downtrend in rates is still intact, and we do expect that they will continue to inch lower throughout the remainder of the year. But rates are really good. For well-qualified borrowers, conventional loans are pretty much across the board under 3%. Your FHAs in VA in the 2.25% range. If you want a nice lender credit, maybe 2.5%, 2.75% with a couple of points, a couple of percent lender credit back. The biggest news is with last week, the adverse market fee being removed. Rates dropped about 0.1% across the board for refinances. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, since like August of last year, or they got delayed to October of last year, they've been charging a 0.5-point fee on all refinance loans. That was eliminated. So in effect, dropping rates about 0.1% across the board. So with rates low, the adverse market fee gone. It's a great time to refinance. Great time to access some of the cash. I have a lot of clients now pulling a lot or a little bit of cash out of their home with the values so high to sort of bring things up to speed. A lot of people, in 2013, 2018, buying homes, first-time homes that needed some work, and now they have a bunch of equity in the property and rates lower. They're able to access some of that equity to do improvements to the home.
No, good stuff. So here's the deal, guys. If you are looking to buy a property, looking to sell a property, need a real estate agent, reach out to myself reach out to myself. I'm happy to put you in touch with someone. Need a lender across the country, anywhere, doesn't matter. Want somebody that does business like Josh does business, want somebody that does business like I do business. We network. We're always in touch with people because we mastermind, right? We want to be around like-minded people that do a good job. We're happy to put you in touch with one of those. I'm going to post a little something here so that you guys can reach out if you want to. Jeb and Josh's information. Where would one find that? That is really the question. We wouldn't find it there. There, look at that right on top of the nail.
Right on top of your.
That's fancy.
Your fancy.
Those ants.
Where are your fancy ones? I don't even see where you hid those. So.
I don't either. I got right. They're under Jeb.
I got.
But anyway, we appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't done so already, hit the thumbs up. It helps more people see the content, helps us accomplish our goals. We're doing this for free, people. We're here just providing information, helping you get what you want. So hopefully we can get what we want, which is a thumbs up. That's it. That's all we're asking. Anyway, appreciate you guys being here. Next Wednesday, I'm actually out of town next Wednesday. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. Never been there. I might be available. Maybe Josh, maybe we do a live from Madison, Wisconsin.
Can we get you like a GoPro like on your head and you can just walk around the grounds in Madison and we can record it?
I actually have one that is able to stream live. I just, I need Wi-Fi and I don't know that I could do that.
I'm
not Casey Neistat, man.
Pixel 5 will handle it.
Maybe. Who knows? You might get just a different live next week. You might not get one at all. I don't know. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching. We will see you next week. Adios.